This track actually started with just a voice note, which sounded like this. So as you can hear from that voice note, extremely rough, but the rough idea is there. So I basically developed that do 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 at the start into the chord progression, which you can hear. That was essentially the basis of the track, and the core for the track for a very long time was literally just that guitar, and then I just built the chords around it. Chords at the start, super easy, super simple. It's just a preset, or there's a preset and a couple of other layers underneath. Tweaked. I think this is Black Hole from Nexus. So the piano is literally just tweaked to what I think. And here come the vocals. Don't stop me, I'm in flight, soaring through the air, reaching the highest heights. So the vocals actually really helped push this track forward, and they really leveled this track up. And before, without the vocals, if you mute it, it just sounds super dry, super boring, nothing's going on. Well, when you bring them in, it's just incredible. Nowhere to go, no one to blame, then the inspiration came. Flip the script and turn the page. Don't stop me, I'm in flight, soaring through the air, reaching the highest heights. So I wanted the track to be about sort of discovering music. In my case, it was discovering music and finding something that made me come back to life and feel alive and give me sort of a direction and a passion. I know that might be kind of cheesy, but I think everyone has something that they find or discover, and then all of a sudden their whole life is sort of devoted to that. It could be your work, it could be a hobby, it could be a sport, it could be anything. For me, it was making music, and I'm really happy with how the vocals turned out. And obviously with the vocals, I've got some stuff that's panned left and right. You've got like backing dubs in there as well, which you can hear when you get to the build-up. Drive the city streets at night, your empty seat is... And of course, there's like one layer that's one octave below everything, which I think is this one. I'm not too sure. Let's find out. A lot of pitch correction on there, just to make it more fruity. To bring me back to life. That's like, you can barely hear that in the mix, but you know it's there, you know it's in the background of the vocals, and that's really important to have 2 or 3 layers that just sort of come together, make it sound alive and full, because if you have one layer, it sounds like crap. So the track really comes alive, I think, when the "Don't Stop Me, I'm in Flight" line comes in, which is around 30 seconds, so around here somewhere. The track just develops from like just the chords and the guitar into more of a different tone, a different vibe in the track. The page, don't stop me, I'm in flight, soaring through the air, reaching the highest heights. Such a lonely road, I'll enjoy the ride. What I did here to add a little bit of extra vibes, there's one layer that is basically just drenched in reverb. I think it's some sort of pluck that I made. I can't remember where I made it, but I put it in there just to sort of give it a bit of fruitiness, give it a bit of flavor, add some stuff to the background, and that sounds like this. And with no reverb, it sounds pretty terrible. It sounds like this. So you can tell when you add the reverb, it's crazy. On its own, it sounds really weird, but in the context of the track, it sounds just adds it in the background, a bit of flavor, a bit of spice. And it's not in that part of the track until the lyrics come in. If we mute it, you're missing so much. I've muted it, put it back in. It's just crazy how such a small sound can make such a big difference. And then we get into the build-up of the track, and the build-up is, pretty standard with the chords. Chords go up, chords go down, and I hold the same chord. If you listen to the chord progression, I hold the same chords in the second part of the build-up, which I think is really important. Originally, I had it so it was just doing the same progression, but that was really boring. So I decided to hold it. and you can hear that the difference between having the same chord progression twice and having one chord that's like sustained throughout. It's the same, it's still being played, but it's the same velocity and the same repetition throughout. Just extends that suspense and really adds to the track, I think. So this comes into the drop, which I'll play here. A lot of reverses in this track, as with all of my tracks. I love a good reverse. I love reversing the vocals. I love reversing the synths. I love reversing everything. Shoving it just before when that sound comes in just makes it sound super, super nice. So this is the first drop. And so for the bass line at the end there, it goes back up instead of back down. I thought that was a really important thing to do. As you can see, I've got an 808 in with the bass, and this is really important because that punches through the mix and that adds a bit of fruitiness. It's sort of pitching up one octave and it coming back down. If I solo that, you'll hear what I mean. Just going up and then back down, and at the end just adds that suspense, a different vibe, different chord, different, almost borderline different key. I'm not a music specialist, so I wouldn't be able to tell you, but it just adds a little bit of difference to the track. It's just adding a layer, something different. And then we get into the second part of the track. The second part of the track is important because the guitar completely changes from the do 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 do. It changes to this. This guitar here was actually part of the voice note that I recorded, but I'm not going to play you the voice note again because it's terrible. But what I will play you is the piano that I've got in the background. This was interesting. I didn't have this piano when originally. I'll mute it so you can hear what it sounds like without, and then I'll play it with. Looking back on where I was, I'm glad I took the reins. Sounds very thin. I'll bring it back in now. Nowhere to go, no one to blame. Then the inspiration came. Flip the script and turn the page. Don't stop me, I'm in flight, soaring through the air. And it changes the melody throughout. It's just a nice piano melody that just supplements everything. Then we get to this part of the track. Now this is really important, the breakdown before the build up and then the second final drop. This is where I basically cut everything away. And originally in the project file, I cut everything away and it sounded a bit thin, a bit too, there was a lot of nothingness going on there. To add to that, I wanted something to fill it. Rory got some great ad-libs in here, as you can see up here in the many layers of vocals that I've got. And they filled out the sound. And I had this synth that was just playing this very simple melody that I put in. It ended up staying in the final track, so I think it just really helps. Here it is. And halfway through this, the guitar that was at the start of the track got reintroduced. And I think this is really important because it just reminds the listener from the start of the song where this very simple do-do-do-do guitar was, bring it back in before the second drop, and then also bring it back in the second drop. That was super important to me because I wanted people to remember that guitar, because the guitar is the foundation of this track. And I bring the chords in here, not all of them, bring in these three, and then everything comes back in, including the bass line. And the bass line holds here, as you can see on the MIDI. And the second drop, again, I just added in loads of different effects at the end. I did a lot more percussion, a lot more loops compared to the first drop. You don't want to give everything away in the first drop. As you can see here, I haven't got as much stuff going on, but over here I've basically got everything that I wanted. But I didn't want to fill it up too much, because when you've got too many toppers and claps and stuff going off, it just gets confusing, it gets a bit boring as well, a bit repetitive. So all the effects sound like this. can hear the panning. There's some on the left, some on the right. The kick is very tight, snappy. I like it. There's a signature Vekken down filter, I've called it. It sounds like this. No one's going to sample this, so I'm going to play it to you. Just adds something, just adds a bit of spice to the track. But yeah, I brought the guitar back in the second part of the drop. That was really important because the drop is powerful, but when you bring that guitar back in, just good vibes. Just remind you of the start of the track and the vocal as well. And then at the end of the track, we just have the guitar to roll us out. And I think this is just a nice way to end the track because it's the same guitar. I know I've said it about 5 times, the same guitar at the start, the middle, and then in the build-up and at the end. But you've got a different guitar somewhere after the first drop, which is, it just helps. It just makes sense in my head. I'm trying to map it out for you. Probably doesn't make any sense, but to me, it just makes sense to have this same guitar in the intro, in the outro. Just there's a pleasing circularity to it. And that's it, soft reverb to come out. So overall the track turned out way better than I imagined. Originally it did sound terrible. I'll tell you what it did sound like. Yeah, so this is where I store all of my different versions of this track. This was just called ID18 because I didn't have a name for it, so I just named it. This was the 18th track that I worked on. As you can see, there's loads of different tracks. Some of them coming out very soon, by the way, not just this one. I'm working on some really exciting stuff. But the first version I had of this, the first draft, sounded like this. Terrible, right? But the idea was there for the chords and stuff. And then the guitar comes in. Very wet, bad production. Let's skip to the drop. It's just crap. It's just awful. But you know, this gave the track life. It was what started. It was what it started as. So you can't complain too much. There's some layers with Valhalla shimmer in there. One thing I will talk about before I go to the very end of this track is that there's a layer in this track that in the build-up you might not be able to hear, but I wanted to put it in because it really helped with the vibes in the track. And I will solo it so you can hear it right now, just before the build-up. Can you guess what part of the track this is? I'm going to unsolo it now. You can hear it in the background. And without that, it just sounds terrible. It just sounds very dry, very plain without it. And that's enough from me. The song has come out. I now look like a ghost on this video. So make sure you hit like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Go and stream Back to Life. It's out everywhere. So send it to your friends, your auntie, your neighbor Doris. Send it everywhere. Stick it on in the car and tag me in your stories at Vekken Music of you listening to it. And I will share and let you know what I think. Anyway, thank you very much for watching and I'll see you very soon. Ciao.